Warmly welcome to Marine Innovation Summit 2023, wherever you are to join us. You are participating from 60 countries all over the world. And we are here in Alfa Laval's studio in Lund, in the southern parts of Sweden. I am the moderator of this event. My name is Helena Blomqvist, and I have a degree in environmental science, and I'm also a TV journalist reporting and presenting TV news and other TV programs. But now I'm the host for today. I'm really thrilled for those over 2 hours we have in front of us, where we will explore the path towards a sustainable shipping industry with lowering greenhouse gas emissions. So what are the challenges? What are the solutions? And what are the technologies that we can use? Digitalization is one example, but there are others to achieve reduced emission. And the retrofitting opportunities, what are those and how could they increase for the current fleet? Those and more questions we will discuss and we will talk about with prominent guests and experts and industrial leaders today. And you who are joining us virtually, you can also participate by posing questions. You can raise questions during the panel discussions. There will be 2 panel discussions today, and we will tell you how you should pose your question later on. But for this, we have the editorial team of Alfa Laval. Are you with us, Ulrik Frenander and Franziska Källström?
Hello.
Hello. Yes,
Hi.
we are with you.
Good.
Yes,
Good
and we're
morning.
ready.
Good morning and welcome, both of you. Are you prepared to take care of the questions?
Yes, we are. We're sitting here waiting for your questions to be typed in.
Yeah, and that will be during the panel discussions. So what are your expectations for the summit today?
Yeah, I think we're both looking forward very much to hearing about the interesting topics from the speakers and also from the panel discussions.
Yeah, and we hope that you, as viewers, are engaging and putting in your questions after the panel discussion. So we are hoping for a high engagement here.
You are well prepared. Thank you so much, Ulrik and Franziska, and you will be back later on when it's time for the Q&A session after the first panel discussion. But now it's time for opening this event. And for that, we have the president and CEO of Alfa Laval, Tom Eriksson. He's not here today, but we met him a few days ago and then he made his introduction.
Welcome, CEO and President of Alfa Laval, Tom Eriksson. You are here now. We are very glad for that. You will not be here on the actual day for the Innovation Summit, but I suppose you will look at the event somehow.
I sure will.
Yeah, because it's interesting and very important.
It is indeed.
So the opening, that's for you, and I leave the stage to you.
Thank you. So let me also welcome you to the 3rd Marine Innovation Summit. I think it's a very important time for this meeting. I think we've never been in such an innovative and fast-moving environment as we are today. In Alfa Laval, we are deeply involved in technology development related to the global transition of the energy systems. And that's not only in the marine industry, but also in a number of sectors that are affected in a similar way. For the marine industry and shipping industry in general, we've spent the last 4 or 5 years in trying to build a toolbox to meet the carbon emission reduction targets that the industry has. And at this point, as I think many of you know, we are engaged in wind propulsions, we are engaged in hydrogen as a fuel, we are engaged in biofuel and biofuel production, and a number of other initiatives, including routing and navigation and in various ways to address the emission problem. We firmly believe there's not one big solution. There will have to be a trial and error period to find out the appropriate and capital efficient measures to deal with emissions problem and not rely on one single technology or one single hype. And that's where we are. And I think in the development pipeline, we come a long way. But in the process that's going to happen in the next 5 years, a lot of collaboration is needed in order to generate data, understand efficiency, various solutions for, depending on the age of the ships and depending on the hull shapes and so forth and so forth. So there will be a lot of need for learning going forward. And in that sense, we will be jointly in the process of finding the right way to deal with the carbon reduction targets. I also like to say that for Alfa Laval as a company, we of course work with carbon reduction targets just as you are. In our case, our ambition is to be carbon neutral by 2030, which is a rather aggressive target. And specifically in our scope 1 and 2, we really want to be at the net zero level. We've come a long way on that in terms of our blueprints and our milestone planning. We think it's very achievable. But if we look at our planet impact for our activities, in fact, our far biggest emissions issue is our scope 3, which in fact is your scope 1 and 2. And in that sense, we are also in it together. We need to work together in the value chain to find the right way to address the carbon emission problems. We're in it together in that way, and we are firmly committed to stay the course with what we have in the portfolio today and continue to improve and broaden that portfolio as we go forward and find an effective way of dealing with the energy transition for the shipping. So in that sense, I wish you a very exciting day here today. There's a lot of knowledgeable speakers and a lot of good ideas floating, so I'm sure it's going to be a good discussion during the day and another step forward towards where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tom, you mentioned the 2030 ambitions. What do you say the whole marine industry has to be involved in that? How important is an event like this for making it happen?
Well, let's be realistic. It is one step out of many. But I think what the event signifies in this context is that the speed is much more rapidly than in the past, as I think all of you feel, and we do as industrial company. Normally would have development cycles of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Now, in order to be relevant for the targets that we all have, that development time is cut in half. And that means that we can't do this on our own, nor can you as ship owners spend 5 years testing and waiting for others to do trials. We need to move this in a more aggressive way together. And I hope events like this will help us accelerate and get some courage in order to move forward on testing and trial and finding the right solutions.
So sustainable solutions, sustainable shipping, how urgent is it?
It's very urgent. And I think we all recognize that maybe we should have started 10 years ago. In one sense, we are late in this. And being late doesn't mean that we're going to do stupid things. So in order to, we need to verify technology and efficiency and capital efficiency in various ways in a very structured fashion, although we don't have that much time. So that's why I emphasize really the need to test and generate data and get credibility so that when we put money into technology and solutions that it really works and we achieve the targets we have. And for that, we are short of time.
And what about learning and change experiences? How is that done the best way, you think?
I would say, from an industrial point of view, we are much more sharing with our traditional competitors and others in the industrial sector in order to gain knowledge faster. We used to be more protective on our knowledge, on our technology, and we find that many of us are sharing and co-developing in a way which we never done before. And I think there may be a little bit of the same need also in the shipping sector, that actually part of this is a competitive environment, advantage for a lot of companies, but the competitive advantage is not worth anything if the sector doesn't develop appropriately. So I think this sharing in the sector will be very, very important to accelerate the change.
And it could be even better.
Could be even better.
Yeah. So to summarize then, what are your expectations of the Marine Innovation Summit 2023?
I just hope that if everybody walks home with 2 good ideas, and find a way to test them, try them, work with them, then we achieve a lot. And there will be over 1,000 people here today, so generating 2,000-3,000 initiatives across the sector, that would be a great achievement of today.
But 2 days, maybe 3.
Yeah, 2 is but if you have too many, then they tend not to get done. So I'm a focused guy. I think if we get 2 each, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, Tom Eriksson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Tom Eriksson's introduction was recorded in advance, but now we are back live here in the studio in Lund, in southern parts of Sweden. And it's time for the keynote speaker of Marine Innovation Summit 2023. And she is deeply engaged in sustainable development paired with economic development and innovation. And she has a great experience from those issues. And she was previously a program manager at World Economic Forum. Now she is the CEO and the co-founder of Global Maritime Forum. So we say welcome to Johanna Christensen. Are you with us, Johanna, this morning?
Yes, I am, and thank you so much for that kind introduction. Yeah, I'm joining you from Berlin. I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you in the studio. That would have been so much nicer, but here we are. Sometimes, the situation demands a different location.
We are so glad that you are with us from Berlin this morning, and the Global Maritime Forum, which you co-founded and where you are CEO, that's an international non-profit organization. And you work for that global seaborne trade should increase sustainability, economic development and human well-being. Would you say there is a contradiction of those things?
No, I actually think that they are deeply linked together, and that one cannot exist with the other, right? So the proper economic foundation, economic development, is what allows humans to flourish and to grow, and for societies to flourish and to grow. And so all of these things, they play together. Human well-being is a foundation for economic growth as well. So all of these things are interconnected, and that's how we think of it in the context of the Global Maritime Forum.
Yeah. So now you are the keynote speaker, and your topic is the challenges and opportunities facing international shipping in its quest for decarbonization. So, Johanna Christensen, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. You make it sound very formal, so I'll try to live up to that formality of the keynote role. But in fact, it's me sitting in a hotel room on my hotel bed, speaking into
yeah,
my
but still,
laptop,
we're eager to listen to you wherever you are.
Exactly. But I was so encouraged to hear the opening remarks from your CEO, because one of the things that was the foundation for setting up the Global Maritime Forum was this belief in that progress happens when all parts of a system come together and to discuss challenges and work together on finding solutions. And I think it was really encouraging to hear how much of a sort of an ethos that seems to be and that your CEO shared with us this morning, and which is really part of what we do as well. And so that's nice to hear this alignment in spirit between what we do, even though we come at it from different angles. So much like yourselves in this session here today, a lot of our work is focused on tackling the biggest challenge that arguably international shipping is facing today, that is tackling its greenhouse gas emissions. And I think anybody in the room here knows the basic facts. It's a sector that has 80% of global trade, but emits some 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yada, yada, yada. I'm sure that most of the people in the room today know all of these basic facts. And I think your CEO also spoke to the urgency of the challenge. And I think this was particularly, for me, put on the level of urgency got an extra notch up when we heard from the International Panel on Climate Change, the panel of scientists that evaluates on a regular basis where we are in the global climate developments, that put out a report last week, which was their sort of one of their regular assessment reports, and that just points to the fact that, you know, to the point that was made earlier, we should have started 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And if we're not starting 10 years ago, you know, there's no better time to start than today. So I'm glad that we're meeting on this topic today, and that should be and that it can act as a catalyst for concrete actions that each of us can take, either alone or together with others. Fundamentally, the industry needs to transition away from fossil fuels. I think that's inarguably. The sector emits uses some 300 million tons of fossil fuels today, on sort of more or less on an average basis over the years, and we need to find a way to transition away from fossil fuels. And that sounds like a pretty big challenge, but when we look at it, and in our work and in the research that we've done, we find that it's an utterly achievable challenge if all stakeholders work together to take the right actions now and in the coming years. And especially this focus on now is something that I'll come back to. So what we need to do today in order to make that challenge, in order to unlock future developments, if you will. So maybe just a little bit of context about what's the more concrete element of the challenge. I mean, I think already your CEO pointed to some elements. First of all, you know, shipping being such a disaggregated sector. That's both in terms of overarching, just there's a few big players, but many, many smaller players, but also disaggregated value chains where many, many stakeholders need to or come together to form a global trade value chain. And the same goes in terms of how individual companies work. It's so disaggregated, and there are so many stakeholders involved in the broader shipping value chain, and that's one of the key challenges. I think the pure scale of it as well, and I spoke to the 300 million tons of fossil fuel that needs to be replaced. It's an inordinate amount of fuel that needs to be replaced on an annual basis, and so that's one of them. That's one. The other big challenge that we see is that there's a chicken and egg dilemma that I think many will be familiar with as well, where neither the zero-emission vessels nor the zero-emission fuels are really available at any recognizable scale today. So it's really at a pilot or very early stage deployment of technologies and fuels today. And so we see a little bit this mechanism happening where a lot of the stakeholders are waiting to see for others to move. And this is basically one of the elements that is holding us back, right? Is that, we sit here and we look, is the energy sector moving? The energy sector looks to shipping. Is the shipping sector moving, so that we have confidence that we can, when we produce the fuels that will be needed for shipping in the future, that there will actually be the ships to run on them and the companies to purchase them. And at the same time, the ship owners are sitting and waiting, I don't know if I can have the confidence to order a zero emission vessel when I don't know what the availability of the fuel will be, neither whether it will be available at all, at what cost, where in the world, etc. So this kind of chicken and egg dilemma is one of the main barriers to making concerted action at this point in time. And then, as I just touched on as well, the cost gap between fossil fuels and the zero emission fuels that shipping will be running on in the future is a significant one. There are a variety of different studies, but anywhere between 2 and 4 times the cost of the fuels that we have today could be the cost of the zero emission fuels of the future, and maybe even more expensive in the short term, and then eventually the price will come down. So it's against this backdrop that we in 2019 formed the Getting to Zero Coalition. It's an alliance of more than 200 international companies, organizations from across the maritime, energy, infrastructure, and financial sectors, customers, cargo, so the whole value chain coming together in the Getting to Zero Coalition, committed to commercially viable zero-emission vessels operating on the deep seas by 2030 as a key step to achieving full decarbonization of the sector. So it's this idea of taking a long-term challenge and making it more concrete, tangible for the short term. So how do we ensure that zero-emission vessels can be operating on the deep seas on a commercial basis by 2030? And what are the steps that need to be taken to get there? So one of the steps is focused on policy, and I'll get back to that in a bit more detail later on. But early on in 2021, the Getting to Zero Coalition developed a call to action that basically calls on governments to put in place the policies and investments and work with the industry to make zero-emission vessels and zero-emission shipping the default choice by 2030 in an effort to achieve full decarbonization. So those are some examples. I think another element or another example of some work that's getting done in the Getting to Zero Coalition is a focus on green corridors. This goes back to this idea of the sort of this highly disaggregated and complex sector. So rather than trying to do everything everywhere all at once, green corridors is an idea that is a way to simplify the overarching challenge. Can we focus on specific trades, on specific geographies where a confluence of policy environments, stakeholders, availability of fuels makes it most likely and most impactful for the first zero-emission vessels to be deployed? And since this idea was first took hold and was first sort of came into the public domain in late 2021, we'd be really excited to see how much action has actually happened in forming green corridor consortia, if you will, or collaborations around the world. Last time we did a sort of a full evaluation. We do a progress report on green corridors. We published one in late 2022, and there were at the time 21 green corridor projects under development. And the latest one got added, so number 22 maybe, was announced last week, which is a green corridor collaboration between mining, steel, shipping, and energy companies focused on shipping iron ore from South Africa to Europe, to steel mills in Europe. And I think, again, this is an example of South Africa has the potential to produce zero-emission fuels using renewable energy. They have a high renewable energy potential at relatively low cost. There's a willing group of stakeholders, including the steel producers in Tata Steel in Europe, as well as the mining company, Anglo-American, based in South Africa, that mines iron ore and ships it to Europe, that are interested in taking steps together. And so they work together with a couple of shipping companies and energy company to form a consortium to explore how can we deploy zero-emission vessels on this particular route and to take learning. So the idea is that in working in green corridors, you don't not only get the deployment of the vessels, you get to test ideas, you get to test technologies and fuels, and hopefully these learnings can inform action by others. So that's a big part of it, is that it's a way of simplifying the challenge and generating learnings that others can use as they take their own actions. I think something that's in this context often underappreciated, which I hope will be part of the discussions that you have today, is how much can be done immediately to reduce emissions from shipping. So the focus of the Getting to Zero Coalition is very much on the transition to zero-emission fuels. And in part, it was because we could see if we didn't do something on that now, that it would be very difficult to see a pathway to having the availability of the fuels and the availability of the vessels when we needed them. So, but there's lots that can be done today in the near term, in terms of to support shipping's transition to this resilient and sustainable zero-emission future. And so much of that is about operational efficiency, so improving the operational efficiency of the existing vessels, so the fleet that we have today, through changes in ship speed and performances and a variety of other elements, that really plays a critical role in reducing emissions today. But it also makes has an enormous role to play in terms of lessening the blow of more expensive fossil zero-emission fuels that will be introduced at a later stage, right? So if the cost gap between the fuels that we're using today and the fuels that we're going to be needing in the future is fourfold, then any fuel that we save today is also a manyfold reduction in the cost of the transition. So this is where we see this improvement in operational efficiency being so critical to having a sort of a smoother transition to zero emission fuels, but the cost savings today are not negligible either. So we did just some desktop study together with a number of other stakeholders, and according to that, we could reduce the annual fuel cost by $50 billion US dollars at today's prices. So that's not nothing, right? And even on an individual voyage basis, that's a significant savings and a saving not only in cost but also in CO2 emissions that are cumulative, that we should reap, we should harvest that opportunity. And I hope some of the elements and the enablers and levers could be part of the discussions that you have today. Data and monitoring, it plays an enormous role in this context in reducing emissions today. Pilots, so collaborating on specific journeys, on specific routes, etc. So doing pilots, learning from those pilots, reaping the information and identifying actions that can be rolled out to the broader fleet. There are legal aspects, so the sort of the contractual architecture that exists today is often a barrier to taking some of the steps that need to be taken in terms of speed optimization, for example. So tackling those, and then finally the policies and regulatory landscape, and that's something that I'll also come back to briefly. I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to power through that very quickly. But we shouldn't underestimate the role of policy in this context. In fact, we have a critical window of opportunity this year, this summer at the IMO. It's really a decisive year for the future of global trade, in our view. In July, the International Maritime Organization will revise its greenhouse gas strategy at a meeting taking place in London to determine how and by when the sector transitions to zero emissions future. So as most of you probably will know, in 2018, the IMO adopted an initial greenhouse gas strategy that set an ambition for shipping to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by at least 50% by 2050, compared to 2008 levels. Now, at the time, that seemed like a really big target, but everything we know today leads us to believe, and we know that we need to be moving much faster and set ourselves much more ambitious targets. So first of all, we need a more ambitious end outcome. So we need to be moving faster, both on the end goal in terms of the full decarbonization of the sector by 2050 at the very latest, and some good interim goals that can help support and help mobilize action at an earlier stage in the transition. There are also other important elements to this. So the biggest one, I think, in terms of just the impact on emissions is that we need economic measures that will regulate this price gap between fossil fuels and scalable zero-emission fuels, so that the zero-emission fuels can become the competitive choice, but that will also help incentivize the sector to reduce the use. So, for example, put in place operational efficiencies. If the fossil fuels are more expensive, that will incentivize the sector to reduce those and to put in place the measures that are needed to reduce in the near term as well. So not just the long-term goals, but short-term goals, and something where we put a price on pollution. And that's fundamentally the outcome that we need, right? And so I would encourage you all in your discussions today, think about what you can do. I think if I was to take the advice at the beginning of two ideas to take away from today, two actions that you can take away from today. The first one would be collaboration. So find ways to work together with partners in your value chain, in your immediate spheres of influence, to see how you can put some of these steps into action. What are the things that you can do in your sphere of influence with your immediate connections and collaborators to unlock some of these ideas. And then the other big element that what I hope you can take away from that today is that this year is a really important one in terms of the regulatory landscape and the incentives that we need in order for not only first movers to take action, but the whole sector to move. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johanna. The whole sector has to move. Let me just ask you, you were talking about the chicken and egg dilemma, that everyone is kind of waiting for another one to act. So what would be your one advice to make things happen?
So from my point of view, the chicken and egg dilemma is often thought about in a sort of a static situation, right? It's like, you know, there's an energy industry over there, and there's a shipping industry over there, and each of them are taking stock of their kind of where we are right now. But actually, both of those have agency, right? And so by coming together and by working together, that's actually the way to unlock whether there will be fuels available and whether the ships will be available in the future, right? By actually entering into collaborations. And I think the one that I mentioned earlier, this Green Corridor Initiative, shipping iron ore from Africa to Europe, it is a concrete one, right? It's it's shipping companies, it's the cargo owner, it's the the importer of the cargo, and the energy company are working together. Engie is the energy company in this instance. Are working together to look at, okay, what's going to be needed where, at what cost in order for this to work. And all of the stakeholders recognize that this is going to be an experiment. We don't know, we don't have certainty about what the outcome is going to be. We don't have certainty about when, how, what. There are lots of barriers along the way, but they are committed to working together to overcoming those barriers.
And so, last question to you: how hopeful are you that the industry actually will manage to the decarbonization goals?
Well, I'm a firmly glass half full person. Well, actually, glass overflowing person, to be totally honest. So I'm always optimistic. Yeah. I think to do the kind of work that we do, we have to be optimistic. It's optimistic in its nature. But it doesn't happen on its own. It doesn't just happen. We can't each of us sit around and wait for others to act. And I really liked the comment that your CEO made about collective courage and individual courage. Sometimes it takes me looking over at the person next to me, about my business partner, about my collaborator, and at you, and saying, okay, do you believe in the change? Do I believe in the change? Okay, together we kind of believe in it. We can build up this collective courage to take the first steps that are needed.
Johanna Christensen, thank you so much for your keynote speech today. So on the agenda now is the first panel discussion. And we are all in the digitalization era in our personal lives, in society as a whole, and also in most industries, not least the maritime industry. So how far has digitalization come in the industry? And not least, what does it mean for decarbonization and the opportunity to reach the goals? Is digitalization lagging behind and therefore slowing emission reduction? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities to make it go further and faster? And what are the solutions? That are questions that we will discuss with an eminent panel, and you will meet them in a short while. But I will also tell you, the audience, that you have the opportunity to raise questions to the panels. We have an editorial team ready to take care of your questions. And you do raise questions just by putting them in the box. You will see the question box in the bottom of your screen. There is a question box there in the bottom of your screen. It should appear there. And ready to get your questions is Ulrik Frinander and Franziska Källström in the editorial team. And the panel is making themselves ready. There are 4 guys from different places in the industrial world, and they will discuss digitalization and decarbonization. And the main question is if digitalization is lagging behind and thereby slowing decarbonization. So let's meet them now, the panel. We have with us 4 guys, I think. You are all there. Welcome, everyone. And first we have Mikael Skov, CEO of Hafnia. Good morning.
Good morning.
You have more than 35 years of experience in the shipping industry, and you are also a board member of the international shipping group Clipper Group and work as a CEO at Hafnia. And beside you is Henk Jan Gersee. Welcome and good morning to you as well.
Good morning.
You are the CPO, the Chief Product Officer at DCA, the Digital Container Shipping Association. And DCA creates freely available digital standards, and one of the aims is to enabling openness and collaboration between industry stakeholders. And before coming to DCA, we can say you were also a part of implementation of digital technology in the aviation sector. Maybe we will talk about that later on in the panel discussion. Now, beside you in the upper right corner, as I see it, is Martin Stopford. Good morning.
Good morning.
You are economist and industry expert and executive director of Maricon, and you've been involved with maritime industry for more than 50 years, and that is in high position at British shipbuilders, Lloyd's Maritime Information Services and Clarkson, among many other things, and now at Maricon, which you actually founded over 25 years ago to support maritime education in different ways. And so, not last but not least, we have a captain on board, and that is Stefan Bülov. Good morning.
Good morning from Africa.
Good morning from Africa, yes, because it is good morning from all of you in the panel, but some of you who is watching this is good afternoon or good night or whatever. You are the executive board director at BIMCO and also chairperson at BIMCO Marine Environmental Committee. And you have got over 20 years hands-on work at sea, for the last 20 years executive managed positions. And one of them is where you are now at BIMCO. Yes, first I have a question for you. And I really just want you to do like this or do like this, if you agree or if you not agree. So, do you think that digitalization is going too slow? Thumb up or thumb down? So we can see the thumb also. Is it going too slow is the question. I couldn't see your thumb, Martin, but let's begin with Michael then, who did not really agree. Why is that?
Well, I don't think it's going too slow, because I think that overall, particularly because of all the regulation that we're seeing on the environmental side, I think there will be a push towards digitalization for all of us. So, you know, I do believe that when it comes to independent reaction and companies making their own decisions, you know, I would have been more in doubt whether that would have pushed this forward. But I do think that what we are seeing from the environmental regulations and the requirement for ship owners in general to what they have to produce and deliver and quality of data will require, in my view, more digitalization, and therefore I think that will push that development a bit further forward.
Okay, so let's hear what Henk-Jan and Stefan says, and we begin with Henk-Jan. You think it is lagging?
Yes, I do think it is lagging. I do believe that we need to accelerate the digitalization of the industry, given the challenges from an experience perspective, from a productivity perspective, as well from a sustainability perspective. If we look at the lack of data flowing through the supply chain, that is immensely impacting the visibility of the cargo. That is immensely impacting the productivity of the ecosystem, and also is impacting the sustainability, so the carbon emissions. So I really believe that we can accelerate, and that's also a big force of the Digital Container Shipping Association to push this forward.
And Stefan, what do you say about it? You also think that it is lagging too much, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the pace of digitalization in the maritime industry has picked up. I agree with that and with Michael, but it must still develop faster. And we are at a critical juncture where innovation are key to survival. And as environmental targets and other drivers of change and new regulations are pushing ship owners, charterers, and operations towards these novel digital solutions. So we are a little bit of a more fragmented industry than other industries are. So, and we were actually never known as a front runner rather than a follower if it came to the utilization of disruptive technologies. And but overall, we're close to make significant changes in shipping, and we are in a good way. But we have to work hard to achieve the targets. It's not a thing which is if we do not push it, we will not reach it. Thank you.
Okay, and Martin, there was no thumb up, there was no thumb down of the question.
I don't know
What do you think about it?
Well, I was a bit confused about what was thumb up and what was thumb down, if you know what I mean. But I agree with everybody. I think what Stefan said about the time that we need to be moving ahead is very true, of course. But you need to see digitalization as part of a long process. I mean, the shipping industry started to digitalize in 1860 when they put the first cables under the sea. And that really dramatically changed the shipping industry, because you could suddenly fix a ship in London and tell it where to pick up a cargo in Calcutta. You know, that was an enormous development. But the problem I see with the digitalization move, which ought to be moving forward but isn't really moving that quickly, is that we've come out of 50 years where the focus has been on bulk shipping and a very really it's been on mechanical development, bigger ships every year and slightly better port facilities. But with absolute estimate on costs, very low manning levels on the ships, very low staff levels in the offices. And all of this is very difficult for something like digitalization, which I would say is one of the most complicated. I mean, I've been involved in digitalization in shipbuilding, in the broking industry, in the information management industry. It's a long, slow process. 10 years is nothing in digitalization. And so I think what I'd say for the starters is that we need to, as well as getting digital apps and so forth, we need to build organizations at every level that are capable of doing the very novel work that's needed to make, I think McKinsey used the word interoperability. We're trying to get, well, we're not just digitalizing, we're trying to get different bits of the business to work together in synchronization. And that I think is a very challenging task. So, which goes back exactly to what Stefan and the others said, you know, that we have a long road to go down here.
Yeah, there is a long road, but the time is not that long. So we are coming to the solution, what to do, what you think is urgent to do and what has to be done in a more long-term schedule. But first, what would you say are the main obstacles? What is the real thrilling things the obstacles? What do you say? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I can start. If nobody... No, Henk, please go ahead.
Okay, shall I start? Okay. So if we look at the obstacles from my perspective, I look at container shipping being still largely dependent on manual and paper-based processes, non-standardized data and non-interoperable technologies. And this really creates inefficiency, delays, waste, and negatively impacts the experience. So what we believe is that we, starting from the data perspective, work with standards, get to data for documentation, indicate actually whereabouts of the cargo, align with port calls and the vessel schedules. And the only way to ensure this is to make sure that the data is timely, accessible, and accessible for all stakeholders. So that also means kind of a cultural transformation where we need to be more open to other stakeholders in terms of data collaboration. And that's also one of our big efforts to make sure it's not look at data as something for ourselves. No, we really believe that if we work together from a data perspective and collaborate based on standards, that the returns are 3 to 5 times bigger than if we would do this on our own.
Michael, what's your take on the obstacles to go further?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, first and foremost, I think that it's probably difficult to just speak about the industry as a whole, right? Because I actually do think when we talk about digitalization, when we talk about decarbonization, there's a big difference between what sectors you're in. I think on the container side, as Henk just explained, there's also a lot of push and involvement from the customer side towards this. What we are seeing, for instance, on the tanker side, transporting of oil, is that we don't see a lot of push or willingness from the customer side to standardize and to actually create digital solutions, even around processes. So I do think there's a significant difference to where you are in the shipping industry. So we are definitely facing relatively big problems in terms of getting this standardization of data and processes introduced. So I think that's one challenge. I think that at least the conclusion we've come to after spending a lot of time on this is maybe not to try to make it too complex, i.e. try to find more simple things to solve. And by that, then building block by block, say, here's a identified problem that we all should agree that we can move forward on, get that done, and then start building on slowly but surely, as opposed to trying to make a complex solution from day one. We have tried that, and it seems to be difficult to get the whole supply chain in our sector to join in on that.
Stefan, when we had contact before this event, you were talking about that it's quite conservative, and your hope was the younger generation, not so conservative. Can you please tell us what you mean?
Thank you. But I do believe that we need to bring in new types of talent and skills to effectively implement digital technologies and to be more open to data sharing. And because a lot of things are really coming up to a competitive mindset and a lack of collaboration. I also want to relate to what Michael and Henk said. We also have a technological disparity, and especially if it comes to container versus bulk or tramp shipping. We need to keep a cap on costs as well. But with the introduction of new types of wireless sensor technology, for example, it is now easier to retrofit existing ships and to improve connectivity there. So we shall not forget, we are a very fragmented industry, especially in comparison with the aviation industry. Despite the consolidation in container liner companies, the average ship owner has less than 10 ships. So that's that's of course something we have to keep in mind as well. And of course, what Hank addressed, the better willingness to go for universal standards, and I think that's necessary. So we need more collaboration, consolidation, sharing of knowledge between the different stakeholders in the industry, and and also sharing with the shipping organizations. I'm speaking for BIMCO today as a ship owner member of BIMCO. We have a new BIMCO strategy, innovation and research department, which goes along from all aspects, from e-bills of lading to other things which are related to decarbonization and so on and so forth. So it will require also more fundings and investments. Resources need to be allocated more towards innovation and technology, with of course keeping a cap on costs. But we will need an intensified and aligned data collection of accurate and objective data. That's important, because bullshit in, bullshit out. Thank you.
Bullshit in, bullshit out. Martin Stofford, I was listening to another event, and you were saying that uncomfortable and discouraging is how maritime business must be feeling now with the energy transition and the digitalization. What do you mean by that? What is the problem?
Well, I guess I think that they're feeling uncomfortable and discouraged, which I can well understand. It's a tough thing to do. And I think what I'd like to add on, if I may, to the very good comments from my colleagues here is the shipbuilding industry and the equipment industry. Because, I mean, one of the problems we need is to get integration of systems. And at the moment, the shipyards have been used to reselling the last design. There are ships coming out with lots of digital kit on it, but not necessarily very well integrated. It's lots of different systems, and the shipyards don't have the same relationship with the equipment industry that, say, the car makers do. I mean, basically, the car makers call the shots on protocols and things like that. And motor cars have absolutely consistent digital onboard systems with control area networks. And that opens the way to integrating a number of different major systems. And there are at least eight or nine major electrical system or systems, functional systems on board a ship. And I can see problems ahead if they don't get properly integrated. Then simple things like rolling out upgrades are going to become a nightmare, because one supplier rolls out the upgrades and the others don't. It interferes with someone else's function, and you do need a proper structure and so I think the shipbuilding industry and the equipment industry, it would be great to see some product protocols and some procedures so that you don't get this problem that every single flow meter has a different code on it, that sort of thing. That's my addition to this particular comment.
And talking about other sectors, Henk Jan Garcia, you were, before coming to DCSA, you were a part of the implementation of digitalization in the aviation sector. You were at Amsterdam Schiphol successful in digitalization. It's hard to compare sectors, and the shipping industry is much more complex, of course. But do you think there are things that container shipping can learn from aviation sector?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And the question, of course, is also, why is the shipping industry so complex? And is it complexity needed, yes or no? I fully admit that coming from aviation, shipping industry is more complex, involving many stakeholders, innumerable processes, some of which have been in place for hundreds of years, such as the bill of lading. So replacing the bill of lading to an e-bill of lading is a massive effort, involving many. And we closely collaborate also with BIMCO actually towards this effort. And if I look at what shipping can learn from aviation, in 2004, the General Assembly of IATA committed to 100% e-ticketing in 2008 in a 4-year time window. And that's something we're now doing similar. So 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, the CEOs of the DCSA members, the largest container shipping lines, have committed to move to 100% EBL by 2030. And I really believe that with this joint ambition, we can make drive massive change in the industry. So on the one hand, it's more complex. On the other hand, I'm really convinced that with the power we have in the industry, by collaboration, we can end a move to more digital documentation. We can get the data flowing, and this also make a substantial impact from a sustainability perspective.
I will remind you who watch this virtually that you can raise questions in the question box. You will find it on your screen at the bottom, and we will take questions from you in a few minutes. But first I want to hear Michael Skov. What do you think? What has to be done, or what could be done?
Yeah, well, I think there's already been a few comments around this already. I do believe that the comment made about attracting talent, i.e. the comment about organizations, making organizations and corporate cultures ready for digitalization, I think is a super important thing. We should not underestimate that, decades and decades of manual processes. When you start introducing digital solutions, lots of people are going to get concerned about their jobs. So I think there is a responsibility for the leadership to make sure that your organization is prepared, that people are not fearing the digitalization, but on the other hand, will understand the need for it going forward. I think we need to be attractive. It was mentioned before, to talent. I think it is important that we do send strong signals as companies and industries that we are on the forefront in order to be able to attract the people that will help us. And I think it's a very good example is when I started as a trainee for, 40 years ago, I would say probably the first 2 or 3 years, I added zero value to the company. I was being trained, I was trying to understand shipping. When we hire young people today in our industry, I see them basically add value from day one because they come with a competence around digitization. So I think there's a big difference there is we need that source to help us. So I think that at least is one important area to focus on.
So what you mean is that you need more digital skills rather than shipping experience. Is that what you mean?
That's correct. And you need to make sure that your organization is ready to embrace it rather than being scared and push it away, because that's going to delay the process as well.
Thank you. And what do you say, Stefan Bülow? What is needed to be done and what can be done?
Yeah, parts of that I said already, and I very much agree with Michael because that's where I'm coming from. But in addition to that we need a new mindset as well. So a less competitive mindset, and we have to embrace new technologies. We need both skills. So that's an additional skill which will be needed, and it won't go away. It's not like a pandemic, so we will have it, and it will be of great use. But let me please add one thing, because this decarbonization could be faster. We said it's lagging, but it's not only by digitalization. The main reasons are imperfect and impractical regulations, wrong incentives, as well as other political aspects from regional instead of global solutions, and the sheer volume of alternative fuels that would be required for the global fleet. Of the fact that shipping would be competing with other sectors on the availability of carbon neutral, low carbon fuels that were playing a role as well. And actually currently the use of technology for decarbonization is also still challenged by the lack of accurate and objective and accessible data. So I do believe we will all need that. So and we need a better willingness for more universal standards, and we need to involve all stakeholders. That has often been forgotten. So it's not only the shipping industry; it must be the whole maritime industry. Because if you ask what is digitalization, you get various answers from the various segments, and therefore we need to cooperate, and it needs better collaboration.
Collaboration, that's the word for today. So let's see if we have questions from the audience. We say hello to the auditorial team, and that is Ulrik Frenander and Franziska Källström. So let's see if you have questions for the panel from the audience. Are you with us?
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Yes, we are. We are with you.
Welcome again. Have you got questions from the audience?
Yes, I mean we do have some good activities here with questions coming in. So that there is one here around, and we were a little bit on that topic, but the question is, do we have the tools and the knowledge to speed it up with I mean, the internal knowledge, or do we need to engage with external players or external industries and partner up to drive the digitalization? That was the question.
Anyone prepared for this one? Who wants to?
Yeah. Yes, I'd like. Could I say something?
Yes. Please, Martin Stoffen.
Well, I think this is a really focal question because it's hard to find people with the right balance of skills. And one of the things, for example, that maritime education in universities, etc., has tended to focus in recent years on naval architecture, marine engineering, and very much finance and the commercial skills, but very few courses offer as an integral part of the course digital skills and digital training. And I think it would be a very good idea if we could see that. I know when the course started at Cass Business School in the 1980s, we were concerned that a lot of the Greeks who came on that course had previously gone to Newcastle and done naval architecture or something like that, but they didn't know how to manage finance. And at that time, the really important thing for the business was finance. And so Kostas Gramnos started the Institute for Shipping, Trade and Finance, a sort of broadly based commercial course. I think nowadays we need to re-educate people at every level in the business about exactly what goes on in the ship. And I think it's one of the great things about retrofitting is you get to learn exactly what goes on, really. And also to learn about the digital technology that you can use and how to apply that. So you just get comfortable with it. You don't learn how to do it, but at least you remove the barrier. And so I think developing courses which incorporate carefully structured digital training would be a very good thing.
Okay, one more take from the panel of the question of tools and knowledge to speed up digitalization. Who wants to take it?
Yes, so we've had actually a lot of questions, so it's good to see that it's coming in, and we're happy to receive them. But we have a question here on cybersecurity, and as I'm sure you know, that is also new policies coming in. And we have a question here. It goes: we have heard a lot about reasons for delayed digitalization and so on. You talked about that, but isn't the drastically increased level of cybercrime and often an unclear situation to defend against attacks also a very current reason to significantly slow down the digitalization? Or what do you see digitalization compared now to cybersecurity?
Okay, the risks, should that be a reason to slow down? Anyone who wants to take it? I give it to Henk Jan.
Thank you very much. No, so is it the reason to slow down? In my opinion, not. Should we pay attention to this? Yes, and sufficient attention. So it is a new threat, but let's also be clear, there were some other threats in the past. So it's, I think, also an evolution of threats. And we need to defend ourselves. So cybersecurity is a very, very important chapter to operate in the shipping industry. Same goes for aviation industry. Same goes for the health industry. So I think it's a new reality. We should defend ourselves, but it should not slow us down.
Okay, thank you so much. We have one more question, time for that, editorial team. Do you have a quick one?
Yes, we have a quick one here. There was a question because you were talking about sharing data. So could we have some example or a specific data set that could be shared more? An example of that.
Who could give an example of that?
Well, one of the best examples is always the just-in-time issues. I mean, the cooperation between terminals, ports, and shipping, and because we're wasting a lot of energy outside there on the ocean, and coming up with too high speeds to ports where we have to wait. So and therefore the stakeholders of ports, terminals, but also of countries and regions, and coming with in line with the regulations we're having. I think there's a lot of important data which needs to be shared, and we have a very competitive mindset here as well in certain parts. We have started industry cooperation, a joint industry cooperation with ports and terminals, especially quite successfully with Rotterdam and various others. So we are on a way, but this is still a long way to go, and it can really come up to savings between 15 and 30%. Whereas we're trying to cover technological savings we're happy to have them from 5 to 7%, and there on the operational side, we're throwing it out of the window, and that cannot be. So that's one of the very important take-ups.
Thank you so much. That will be the last word for this panel. So cooperation is one of the words that we take with us. Among other words, a lot of good things have been said here. Thank you so much, panel. Thank you so much, editorial team. And thank you, of course, you have raised the questions in the audience. Now we go further on in Innovation Summit. So we just had an inspirational panel discussion. Now it's time for more inspiration, the inspirational speaker. And we all know that shipping industry is crucial to world economy and to people's well-being. But there is a big carbon footprint, and it's biodiversity problems caused by invasive species as well. So now let's get inspired from what might be one of many solutions to those problems. So we say welcome to Allan Nygård-Bertelsen.
Thank you very much, Lena.
And you have a long history of technology-based industrial business, and now you are CEO of Hydro Hull Cleaning.
Yes, exactly.
So I leave the stage to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Allan Nygård-Bertelsen, and I'm here to talk about in-water robotic hull cleaning and why that is important from a decarbonization perspective. So let me start to give you my background. I have an educational background both in engineering and in finance, and I started out from the university building aerial drones. But rather quickly, I was contacted by a German-owned company that built underwater drones. And I still today remember the fascination about the difficulties in building technology that has to go underwater. So exploring the seabed is extremely difficult. There is so many challenges. You put it under high pressure. You take your advanced electronics and you put it into water, which wants to come in everywhere. There's low visibility. You can hardly get in contact with the equipment when it's down there due to the low bandwidth in water. So I took up that challenge, and that started my journey that I'm still on today. After a few years in the same group of companies, I took over management of a sonar companies Also extremely interesting technology, exploring the seabed at full ocean depth with acoustics. After some years, I met a group of developers who had or were in the process of developing an underwater robot for cleaning ship hulls. And I was really impressed about some of the solutions they have found to some of the really difficult parts of that topic. One of them was the propulsion unit. They had made this ingenious, really clever thruster solution where instead of keeping the water out of the thruster, they had let the water come in and even used it for lubrication. So that gave a lot of benefit and solved a lot of the problems that were involved with propulsion solutions at that point in time. And due to my background, I immediately knew that there was a business to be made of this. So today, the thruster, the propulsion solution, bases the foundation of a company called Copenhagen Subsea, and the robotic solution is today the Sea Badger, which I'm going to talk about today, in the company Hydro Hull Cleaning. Both I manage today. So I've been put the question, has the time come for in-water robotic hull cleaning? And yes, I definitely think it has. But to answer that question to full, there's two perspectives. There's one, the market perspective, and there's the technology behind it. So let's start with the market. Why is it that we do clean the ship hulls? There are basically three main topics. One is the invasive species issue. We all know about invasive species. We've heard about it, but it's something that is increasingly being an issue, and that countries all over the world are increasingly having focus on. So these days, a lot of companies move to stronger regulations within restrictions of where you can clean and that you need to capture whatever you clean off the ship. So you need to capture all the fouling. Some countries are not there yet, but over time, everybody will move to stronger and tighter regulations. Then there's, of course, the cost reduction. Having a clean ship hull reduces drag, and of course, it reduces the consumption of fuel. So that gives an immediate benefit to the ship owner, but with that comes a reduction in the CO2 emission. So cleaning the ship hull not only gives a benefit to the ship owner, it gives a benefit to all of us in terms that it helps us reduce these CO2 emissions to reduce the greenhouse gases. And it really matters. The shipping industry accounts for up to 3% of the global annual CO2 emission. So if we can do something about that, it really has an impact. This is a huge single source of emission. So how much does it actually matter to clean the ship hull? I have some example here of fouling. On the left side, you can see light fouling. It's hardly visible. We call it slime. On the lower left side, you can see hard barnacles. So that's hard fouling. That's really significant. You can see it very easily. The light slime is represented on the graph in the gray area. And you can actually see that it gives up to more than 20% reduction in fuel by cleaning that off. And in the brown area, you can see that hard fouling actually gives a reduction between 40 and 50% in fuel consumption. So it really matters to keep your ship clean. So on the technology side, we have targeted this with an in-water cleaning system, and we call it the Sea Badger. And well, there are so many value propositions here, I don't really know where to start, but let's take it from an end here. It's a fully electrical system. That means there's no hydraulic fluids in the water, so no risk of polluting the water. We have a brushless cleaning system. that means that we can adjust the cleaning speed, we can adjust the flow, we can adjust the pressure. This is really important to protect the coating. Coating is there to protect the ship against corrosion. There are different types of coating. In one end, you have hard coating, very easy to clean on, but the fouling grows more rapidly on that. In the other end, you have more sensitive foulings, where fouling grows slower, but it's more sensitive to cleaning. You can simply mechanically clean it off or brush it off if you're not careful. Then we have, due to our propulsion systems, the unique thruster we have a very powerful vehicle. So we are able to operate outside harbors in stronger currents and in harsher conditions. And we are able to clean faster. So the vessel itself, the vehicle, the Sea Badger, is what happens underwater. Due to our filtration system and the capture system, we have a rather large setup on deck of the ship as well. So we put all of this on a service vessel where we have pumps, we have generators, we have a crane to launch the vehicle, and we have this rather complicated and large filtering system. We also have a container where the operators sit inside and control the vehicle. So this is a real industrial setup. And our target and our goal is that we're able to clean a container ship while it's unloading and loading in order not to slow down its schedule. Here we have some pictures, real-world pictures. On the left side, you see the Sea Badger being launched. This is a quiet day. Not all days are like this. On the right side, you can see the view from the pilot seat, from the control room. And of course, the pilot needs to see what happens in front of the vehicle. So we have cameras showing where he has cleaned and where he needs to go. And we have cameras behind the vehicle, both to see how successful the cleaning is and as a documentation for the ship owner that his ship is clean. And he can also see the condition of his coating and the ship in general. So I really love these pictures. This is pictures from below of the Sea Badger in action. These are very rare pictures because most often visibility is very poor. We often operate in harbors where there's a river coming out with muddy water, so you can have visibility down to even less than a half a meter. So that means that in order to help the pilot, we have integrated a sonar system that makes him look forward up to 50 or up to 30 meters in front of the vehicle in very high details. But these images really clearly show how important it is to clean these ships, because nobody cleans a ship that has no fouling on it. So very often when we come out, a ship looks like this, and it's very easy to see where you have been and where you need to clean. So a little bit about the market. Around the world, there's approximately 55,000 merchant ships trading internationally. We estimate that up to 20,000 cleanings is done per year, and that number is increasing, both driven by the oil price that gives the ship owner a significant cost saving, but also now and in the future from the environmental perspective. So, to answer the question, has the time come for in-water robotic hull cleaning? We definitely think yes. The market is there, the technology is there. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take some of your questions.
Thank you so much, Allan Nygård-Bertelsen, for your inspirational speak. You said the time has come. What do you think will be the biggest driver for the future? Will it be the cost savings, or will it be the consideration of the environment?
Yeah, I think it will be the consideration for the environment. The decarbonization process that we're in now will only accelerate. So far and in history, it has very much been driven by the oil price, by the saving. But I strongly believe that in the future, the decarbonization topic will be the main driver.
Worldwide?
Yeah.
And what do you have competitors in the sector?
Yes.
You do. You are not alone.
No.
Okay.
But we clearly think we have some unique technologies here that makes our system very robust. And if you need to earn money in this industry, you need to buy some equipment and go out to do a service with it. And it needs to be robust. It really needs to be durable. And that has been a problem throughout history, that things you put in water tend to break. It needs a lot of maintenance. And we really think we have nailed that one.
Yeah, okay. So is that what you are most proud of?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that we are very proud of what we have been doing here. And especially this propulsion system is really unique. And that will be a game changer in this industry.
Yeah, and what's the interest? Is it big?
Yes, it is. And
but it could be bigger.
I would say right now we have problems actually following the demand. It takes a long time to develop these systems, and we're right now rolling it out together with a launching customer in Spain. And it just takes time to do development and get things to work in this industry. So I'll say right now it's we have problems following the demand.
Okay, so you have to leave now and go work with this.
Yes,
thing.
I will.
Allan Nygård-Bertelsen, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Almost every industry has to struggle with lowering carbon greenhouse gas emissions, not least the shipping industry. So now we'll focus on the questions, is there too much focus on fuels and new ship designs and engines and fuels on new ships, and therefore missing out the existing fleet to achieve decarbonization? And if so, what more could be done, and what could be done in a better way to retrofit the current fleet, the existing ship, to reduce emissions? Our high-level panel will discuss this, and you will soon meet them. I will introduce them in a short while. But first, let me say to you who are joining us virtually that you can raise questions in the question box, and you will find it in the bottom of your screen. So please raise questions, and we have a little Q&A session after the panel discussion or in the end of the panel discussion, which it's time for now. So let me introduce the panel. I think they are all with us. Yes, you are. Welcome, everyone in the panel. So we say welcome to Karsten Bornemann. Hello and welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You have worked at MAN Energy Solutions for about 30 years and now is heading the worldwide sales of the company's complete propeller portfolio as head of sales, propeller and aft ship. And Christoph Thiem at Hapag-Lloyd, welcome.
Good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are.
Wherever you are, but for you it is what?
It's good. It's almost good noon, so to say.
Okay.
So I'm in Hamburg.
You are in Hamburg, in Germany. So you are the deputy head of strategic asset project, a technical department responsible for retrofit and new building projects and research activities at Hapag-Lloyd. And Sten Sander Jakobsen, technical director of Njord. Is it noon, or where is it, where you are?
Yeah, it's the same time zone. This is Copenhagen, Denmark. So yes, hello everyone.
And Njord is a collaboration, we should say, of Maersk Tankers, Cargill and Mitsui that aims to accelerate greenhouse gas reductions by making existing vessels more fuel efficient.
That is correct.
Yes, and then we have in the same time zone, I think, James Halliwell. Hello.
Hi, good morning. Just an hour earlier in London this morning.
Yeah, an hour is nothing. You are the technology project engineer at Shell Shipping and Maritime. And among other things, you are focusing on technologies to accelerate adoption of hydrogen as a marine fuel and also research about proton exchange membrane fuel cells and, of course, other technologies for commercial shipping. So, welcome everyone. I have the first question for you all to answer, and it's a thumb up or a thumb down. That is that you agree what I'm saying. This is that you don't agree. Then the main question then is the industry is so focused on new fuels and new ship designs that they, to some extent, neglect and forget the current fleet. Do you agree on that one or not? Okay, well, you 2 thumbs down and 2 on the, well, like this. James Halliwell, you were like this. Why?
I was more thumbs down. I think there's been some.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's been some great work already to retrofit some energy efficient technologies. Things like air lubrication and flattener rotors have had quite a lot of success. But there's definitely more to do in terms of new fuel technology around hydrogen and fuel cells, and really reducing the emissions from the fuels needs further work.
Sten Sander Jacobsen.
Yes, my thumb was to the side because I do not believe we can have too much focus on future fuels and new designs. This is super important for the industry. However, I would like much more focus on the retrofit side. We do see that we have a lot of wonderful technologies that are not being adopted at wide scale in the shipping industry. I'm sure we'll get into some of the trouble areas there a little bit later in the panel. But we need to accelerate the retrofit of existing vessels, and that will also support the adoption of future fuels later on by retrofitting these vessels to be able to burn the methanol or ammonia or what comes next.
Yeah. Okay. Christoph, I didn't see your thumb either. I had a little problem seeing your thumbs.
It was
down.
like this.
Okay.
So more or less really down.
Really down.
Yeah,
Okay.
because of course we have to also think about new buildings for new technologies, for sure. But at least for Hapag-Lloyd, I can say we really do a lot. We really invest a lot of money at the moment in our fleet to make them future-proof. And to just mention one example, of course, we as Hapag-Lloyd set our goal for 2045. We want to be carbon neutral. But on the other hand, we also said 2030, we already want to be minus 30% in CO2 equivalent compared to 2019. So if you look then on vessels, which are normally operated like 20 years, you see clearly our obligation to do something already now, and that is what we are doing.
And Karsten Bornemann, you were a little bit like this.
I have to be politically carefully because I'm working in a company which spends the majority of our R&D money on developing our new engines for the future fuels. So I would like to have a job after the summit, so I shouldn't say they're all wrong. But I think it's also natural that we start in the new building sector and in the new ship design to test our solutions before the experience we get there. We take them into the retrofitting. So that was why I was a little bit neutral.
Okay, but if it was only you and me here, what would you say then?
I would like to see more pace on the retrofitting, yes.
Okay, so if we should nail what the difficulties are, why is it why is it difficult to retrofitting the current fleet? What do you see? Go on, Karsten.
Well, I think some of the difficulties are, first of all, we work in a very narrow time span. On new buildings, again, we have time. On retrofitting, we need to hit the vessel when it's in dock, so it's limited. It's across many companies. When you retrofit a solution, it's not only one product. It's with a holistic approach on doing something with various suppliers. So especially the more small and mid-sized owners, I think they have challenges in handling these rather complex projects with retrofitting.
And Sten Sander Jacobsen, what's your take on the problems?
This is my favorite topic because this is what we are helping ship owners and charters with every day. One of the main obstacles in retrofitting the world fleet today is the ownership structure in shipping, where the average ship owner, as we heard earlier, owns less than 10 vessels. They do not technically manage their ships and they don't commercially manage their ships. So the people who need to design and think in what to retrofit on the vessel are different from those who own the vessel and need to pay the bill, and different from those who actually benefit from the retrofit installation. So this triangle of ownership or responsibility in shipping needs to be dealt with by collaboration. So the beneficiary of the fuel savings from retrofitting partakes in the investment of the technology. And this is something that we spent quite some time on setting up to accelerate the retrofitting of greenhouse gas reducing technologies.
So this triangle you are talking about, how would it work if it should be in a better way?
Well, the way shipping is working is the ship owner puts the ship in a time charter agreement. So the charter is paying for the fuel. If you have a 3-year time charter, you can make an agreement that the charter pays a percentage of the installation. So the actual benefit flows back into the charter who pays the fuel, and the owner will then get the equipment on board and have the technical manager operate it appropriately.
Christoph, one thing you said when we had contact before the event was the lack of numbers of shipyards.
Yeah, but that's correct, at least for our very big vessels, yeah? So if you talk about very large container vessels or ultra-large container vessels, if you want, you just see a problem of yards available, yeah? The first thing is just the size of the vessel, especially if you talk about you would like to retrofit something in Europe. Yeah, this would be just like the first bottleneck you could see. And the second thing is we see at the moment like a big rush on the new building market. So this makes like the new building yards, if you would like to have a major retrofit, like a dual fuel conversion, perhaps together with a new building yard, at least as the, supporting partner, yeah, probably they don't have even capacity for such a project during the next years to come, because they're just fully booked with new buildings. So yeah, just finding a yard which is able to handle complex retrofit projects can be a challenge nowadays.
James Hellaway, what about regulations, if we see it as a problem?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're an industry that's driven quite heavily by regulation. We tend not to change unless there's a regulation that requires it. I think there's been some promising steps in that direction. We've had new emissions regulations from the IMO that came in force this year in 2023. And we'll see the impact that starts to have at the end of this year when ships start to have to report their emissions. And those ships that are scoring a D or an E grade in these new regulations will have to start developing an emissions improvement plan. And I think those emissions improvement plan will start to help the adoption of retrofit technologies. Ship owners will have to start to fit something to improve their emissions, but it'll be several years before we start to see the impact of that. And as Christoph said, we might also see a bottleneck that the ship owners simply don't have the dry dock availability to install these technologies that we need to meet the new regulations.
What about cost? I mean, that's something that really drives or not drives what you are doing. Is that something you want to comment as well, James?
Yeah, I think it's as Steen touched on earlier that the technologies are expensive, and you have this relationship between the charterer and the ship owner, where typically the charterer quite often pays the fuel bill, but it's the ship owner that needs to invest in putting the technology on the vessel, and these cost sharing agreements between charterer and ship owner can make retrofitting new technologies quite complex. More work between charter and ship owner is, I think, definitely needed to help share these costs so that we get the most efficient ships in the future.
Mm-hmm. And Carsten, Anna, you have things to say about that ship owners, small and medium-sized, are not used to manage these kind of projects. Would you say something about that?
Well, we are, of course, with our solutions trying to support the ship owners and trying to come up with package solutions rather than individual projects and do all the calculations and some of the coordination we also help our customers with to ease them on these retrofit installations which we make, which involves both engines, derating engine power limitations, but also changing propellers, installing efficiency devices, and get it verified last but not least. So all of that we try to assist our customers with.
So there are a few problems. There you have said quite a few. There are of course more. But if we go to the solutions, possible solutions maybe. So what can we do, or what can the industry do to boost retrofitting of the current fleet? Let's begin with Sten.
Yes, I had a quick glitch in the on the internet, I think, but what can we do to boost retrofit in the industry? I think, as Carsten also said, there needs to be support for the ship owners on how to combine the different technologies, which is something that we also pride ourselves of doing. It is quite complex to understand the total potential of the vessel when you combine equipment from different suppliers. How much will you benefit once you install X, Y, Z in combination? And generally what we see is we install up to 8, 9 technologies at one time, and ship owners appreciate to get support in that area, because especially when you need to target who pays the bill for the installation, there needs to be credibility around what are you going to gain from the cost, the payback time. And I think we're going to see a lot more support to ship owners from entities like Carsten's and my own from Njord.
Yes, let's pass over to Carsten. Will there be support from you more? Even more?
There definitely will, but we are actually also struggling with getting people on board because the demands are so high. We are just under limits, so there are requests from many ship owners and clients. So we of course need people to assist us with handling these projects and these solutions, and this is one of our challenges. That's the limit and the demand, the high demand at the moment.
Mm. But you are working on to taking care of more customers.
We are working on it, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Christoph, what do you say?
So I think there is already a lot of things ongoing which really boost retrofit efforts. Like we have these major impacts of new fuels and new fuel cost, which will come for us ship owners. And of course, we see this one, and we see also the regulations coming in force, and this already puts a lot of pressure. Yeah. So of course, we now we start to, or not start, we continue to investigate and analyze our fleet. And as I mentioned, we are really going full forward for optimizing our fleet. Just to mention some examples, at the moment we have started to retrofit propellers for new vessel service speeds for 80 vessels. 80, and also 30 new bulbous boats just for optimizing for further reduced vessel speed. We are doing premium painting codes on almost every vessel that goes now into dry dock. of course, all these energy efficiency measures like VFD retrofits, where is not already a VFD installed for sea cooling water pumps and things like that. So all is now going on. So I only can say, at least for Hapag-Lloyd, there is no need to further boost something. Yeah, of course it can be easier. Yeah, so for the very big retrofit projects like these dual fuel conversion retrofits, here it's really needed that you find strong partners with experience and who can take care about the complexity of this project, because the ship owner on its own cannot do this. Also, not a big liner company as Hapag-Lloyd, and this is support which is required from technology providers and shipyards. But if you just think that there is, how to say, demand and a push to do something, I think this is already on a high level.
And James Holloway, Shell, you about pilot projects. Then that's essential to demonstrate what the retrofitting possibilities are. Tell us a little bit about your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think pilot projects that have support from government or industry bodies in terms of funding is key to develop the new technologies we need in the future. Without funding to help demonstrate these technologies on board a ship, we'll never get the new technologies we need. We've launched a few pilot projects in Shell looking around how to deploy hydrogen as a fuel on ships. And just last week, we announced the start of an EU-funded project with 6 other partners in the industry to retrofit a compressed hydrogen storage system and a fuel cell to a 20-year-old bitumen carrier that's in our chartered fleet, to really prove and demonstrate how this kind of technology will work on some of the older vessels in the industry that need the support to decarbonize. And it's through the EU grant, the support that we've had from the European Union Horizon Fund, that's really helped the ship owner and some of the partners in the project to develop this technology and trial it on the vessel.
Other examples from you in the panel, examples to learn from, or examples of things going on that could drive the retrofitting further on. Who wants to? Yes?
I can start. Again, back to the combination of the various technologies. So first and foremost, it's super important to remember all the energy-saving devices that has been developed the last 40 years, because even LED lights are not widely used on ships. So LEDs, VFDs, and ducts and PPCFs and all that should still be in focus. But when we look at the more novel technologies like rotor sails, air lubrication, and so on, there is a really high potential. Of course, it's also a high cost, but with the increasing expectation on fuel prices, this is going to be a viable solution. The complexity here is when you combine these technologies to an existing vessel, you will also need extra power on board the ship, because air lubrication has big compressors that need to run. Rotor sails are rotated with electrical motors, and the ship is designed to operate on one auxiliary engine at a capacity that's at the capacity the ship is designed for. So then you introduce a power takeoff system to the main engine, so you can power up these new technologies. So it becomes quite complex thing to deal with. And going back to the collaboration in the industry, which we've been very impressed about, going to the different suppliers, saying, okay, let's go together in a workshop and figure out, okay, how much power do we need to take off from the main engine to actually enable the air lubrication and the rotor sails, and do we have enough power available with the expected EPL that we're also looking at. So it's been fantastic to see the willingness to collaborate and make these things come true.
Anyone else who wants to add something to that?
I think it's also important to make sure that we look at how the new builds coming out of the shipyard today can be optimized to be compatible with new technologies. The ships today aren't always being fitted with some of the energy efficient technologies that Steen mentioned, but it would be really helpful if they had the spare switchboard capacity, some additional space to run cables, piping, other facilities that you need for this equipment. If we spend just a tiny bit more in making sure we have some spare capacity, then it would be a lot easier to retrofit these new vessels in a few years' time.
And Carsten, do you want? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, this understanding of the interaction, as Steen said, we meet a lot of projects where maybe the ship owner has problems with deciding which efficiency devices to install. And they say to us, okay, one of the first obvious things is upgrade on the propeller. And then they say to us, maybe later on we will install a duct. But that's not a very wise decision to take because the duct will influence the propeller design. So you have to take that holistic approach and do it at the same time so our propeller design gets better because of the duct. So if you do it as individual solutions you implement, then you don't get the full benefits out of the solution. And this was also, I think, what Steen and others have mentioned here. So we are urging the ship owners to take these decisions with the holistic approach.
Yeah, what do you others in the panel say about it holistic? You want to maybe solve something, but you don't have the holistic view upon it. Is that your opinion as well?
Definitely important with the holistic view. That's what we preach every day. You have to look at the specific vessel, but you have to look at how is that vessel operated, where is it trading, anything from water temperatures to wind and so on. And then you have to design the right package of retrofit so it enables each other and also becomes a viable financial solution for the ship owner and or charterer.
James, I don't know if you mentioned, but what about the compatibility of the existing fleet and to upgrade to new technologies? What about that problem?
It's definitely a problem, and it's very vessel specific. I think you spend a lot of time looking at individual vessels and working out how to retrofit them. Some are relatively easy to retrofit. They've already got some spare switchboard capacity or space for the technology, but some are very difficult, very space constrained, very crowded engine rooms. And I think this problem's only going to get worse when we look at new fuels technologies, particularly trying to retrofit fuel cells or new engines. Fuel cells in particular are really suited to vessels with electrical propulsion systems. You can connect a new fuel cell into the vessel to power it forward, but there aren't that many ships existing today with electrical propulsion systems or shaft generators that would be compatible with these new technologies. And it's a very big, complex, time-consuming job to start retrofitting a full electrical propulsion system. So there's definitely some challenges there to be overcome in terms of how we install particularly new fuels technologies on these vessels.
I will remind you who are watching that you can raise questions in the question box, and you have it on your screen, on the bottom of your screen. We will soon have some questions from you in the audience. But first, Carsten, when we talked before this event, you were talking about that regulations, that they are underway, but there are no incentives to go further than the regulation. And I believe that you were a little bit concerned about that.
Okay, if you go beyond the regulations, I suppose there should also be, let's say, an incentive, and that's maybe, for example, propeller upgrades. That go well in hand with that. You're also saving money on the fuel bill. So I think some of the retrofit solutions pay themselves off with a very short return on investment. Others don't. So it will maybe be boosted by I think there are new regulations underway which might put a tax on black fuels in the future. So that will of course also foster that the ship owners go further in this direction. So maybe I'm not that worried as I maybe expressed before.
Okay, but a little worried then. But you can always go further. What anyone else who has a take on the regulations somehow?
Yeah, I can pitch in here. We do see a very strong drive from regulation. So ship owners are predominantly motivated by regulation. However, once you start the dialogue around energy-saving devices to reduce greenhouse gases, the financial incentive from the retrofit that it basically pays off, as Carsten says, can drive more optimization than the regulatory requirement. But it would be important for the industry to have even more push via carbon taxation, much more aggressive than we have today.
So let's see if there are questions from the audience to you. Ulrik Frenander and Franziska Källström, are you with us, the editorial team?
Hi, yes.
Hi,
We're
again.
Here. Hi. Yeah, so we have a question coming in. We have one, for example, I think you touched a bit upon it quite recently, but which technology do you see as most promising as a retrofit option for decarbonization? I heard you talked about the fuel cells, air lubrication, but also carbon capture, wind propulsion, other alternative fuels.
You have talked about it. Who wants to say something more about that?
I would love to say something here. The promising technology is very dependent on ship type, size, and trading profile. So one really promising technology will not be very effectful on certain types of ships. So again, this holistic view, it's really important to look at what makes sense for the particular vessel and the owner. So carbon capture can be super good idea on a CO2 vessel, for instance, where you have the facilities to also land the CO2 that you're capturing, but it wouldn't be really good for a tanker vessel on tramp trade at the moment. When we look at the very big container ships, obviously future fuels retrofits could make sense, and they can then take the availability of fuel. But again, tramp vessels, they do not benefit much from that right now because, and even in the next 5 years, it's going to be very difficult to get the fuel to the vessel. If you look at the battery fuel cell technology, coastal shipping, ferries, it's already happening. But again, a big container vessel on batteries is probably a little bit out in the future. So there's brilliant technologies, air lubrication, rotor sails, fixed wing sails, carbon capture. There's a lot, but you have to, if you put sails on a ship, you have to trade where there's wind. So again, it's very specific to vessel and vessel trade, and that's why ship owners can make good use of contacting professional people who understand all these technologies and can put them together in a smart way.
Some other comment then on which technology that is most promising for retrofit option for decarbonization? Anyone?
Yeah, I think Steen makes a really good point that it's very vessel specific, but I think one technology, if you call it a technology that applies to every vessel, is to choose the best paint you can for the hull of the ship, and to keep both the hull and the propeller in tip-top condition, to keep it clean, well maintained. We saw the presentation on the robotic hull cleaning just before this session, and I think technology like that to keep the hull in the best condition is one of the best things you can do to help reduce your emissions today.
Another question you might have?
Yes. There is a question here, and maybe a little bit referring back what Johanna said also about there is an upcoming IMO meeting this summer What are your hopes and expectations for new policies to be decided on in the upcoming IMO meetings?
Hopes and expectation. Maybe it's not the same thing. I don't know. Carsten, what do you say?
First of all, I think it's good that it happens in IMO, so everybody is let's say, competing or working under the same conditions. I mentioned before, maybe some taxes on black fuels could be an idea. It's been mentioned. I think it's in the pipeline. So that would also foster that the more retrofit solutions are being implemented. So that could be one hope at least.
Okay, Christoph, what's your hope or expectation? You can choose.
The hope or expectation, whatever it would be. At first, I think regulations, they really must be reliable, so that we really can plan with something. And there must be, really the strategic must be clear behind. And sometimes this was a pity in the past. And then about regulations, I think it's still quite a way to go for the new fuels, and also if you talk about carbon capture, how to calculate all this CO2 reduction, all about these well-to-wake perspective. This has to be. I think there's still more work to do. I just make an example. If you have now carbon capture on board the vessel with a heavy fuel oil, can you really calculate on your own? I have this CO2 reduction, because what happens now with the CO2? Perhaps it's used then onshore in the greenhouse or whatever. So if then the shore customer also says, but I use CO2 which was already there, then you would double count the CO2 at the end. And so there are so many different options in practice then, and I think it's really a challenge for regulation to cope with it, but at the end it will be necessary to make it work.
Sten, Sander Jacobsen, hope and expectations.
Definitely a hope, very aligned with the other two gentlemen here, that we have a more strict guideline that we can trust, so we can direct the industry towards the reductions required. And I'm quite sure it will also happen, but my expectations are maybe not going to be met completely, unfortunately, but I do hope for strict regulation, carbon taxation, and some very mature guidelines on how to do.
And last but not least, then, James Helliwell, your expectation and your hopes, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think a hope for me is to see a net zero policy by 2050. Christoph mentioned at the start, and it's the same for Shell, that as companies, Shell and Hapag-Lloyd have net zero policies. The IMO today only has a target of a 70% emissions reduction. So I would hope to see an improvement on that, and there's certainly been talk about it. I think also more of an expectation is around the regulation, as Christoph touched on. Today we don't have the design rules in the IGC or the IGF code for things like hydrogen as a fuel, and to have some technical design guidance rules on how to design ships for these new fuels would be a huge help to the industry. So to start looking at how we get hydrogen into these design codes and other future fuels as well would be hugely helpful.
Okay, and if you have a last word, because you have now, what's the hopeful end of this panel discussion? Just one word each. we can say. I give you one word each. What's the hopeful end of this discussion? We begin with Christoph.
So my hope would be that the shipping industry as a whole just fulfills their role in the responsible role for decarbonization, and this includes retrofits, because we have running vessels, but this includes also new buildings, and that we really, keep going to decarbonize our industry.
James, short, hopeful, last sentence. from you.
I'm going to choose 2 words, innovate and collaborate. There's been some great innovation already. There's some great partnerships. Let's just keep moving forward to deploy these technologies.
And Sten Sande Jakobsen.
Yeah, I really hope people, companies looking at this have been inspired on the retrofit dialogue, and I hope they call Njord and ask for assistance, and also call Carsten and ask for assistance, so we can get the ball rolling on retrofitting the fleets of the world.
And Carsten Bonnemann.
My hope is that it's not just hopes, that I really think we will manage, even though it's a hard target. There's a lot of focus on everybody in the industry, so I think it's not hope anymore. I'm really optimistic for the future.
Thank you so much, panel, for your participation, and thank you, the audience and the editorial team, of course. Thank you all so much. So it has been 2 very interesting, very intense hours of the Marine Innovation Summit, and now actually it's time for closing, and therefore I'm proud to present Samir Kalla, President of Marine Division at Alfa Laval.
Happy to be here.
So many impressions, 2 hours. What's your direct impression?
I just thought this was extremely educative to listen in on these 2 panel sessions and the guest speakers. I just thought it was really motivating as well. And at least the second session was rather optimistic about what the future looks like, so I'm really happy for it, actually.
Okay, so, and I saw you writing and noticing things, yes. So give us something that you actually thought a little bit special about.
You know, when you're trying to listen in for 2 hours and then try to sound really lucid, it's never an easy task, but I'll give it a shot and see where do I land on this one. My first reflection was, if I compare this Innovation Summit to where we were just 1 year ago, we had just, we were on the back of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and there was a question if geopolitics and the need for energy security, the need for food security, would it derail the climate agenda? Nothing that I've heard today gives me the impression that this has happened. I just feel that the guide rails around the climate change and the agenda behind it is as strong as it was a year ago, and I'm really happy for that. Another big discussion last time was there was a request for more clarity around regulation 1 year ago. As I see it today, there is, at least in the panel discussions today, I think this did not come out so obviously, but still there was this, I think this became a bit broader in the sense of, especially in the second panel discussion, to say maybe we need a little bit more around the design rules, etc., in order to be able to implement some of the stuff that people have on their mind. Last but not the least, last year, there was a big discussion around the people side. Would we be able to attract people back into shipping after the COVID phase? And this did not come up at all as an issue today. So I think 1 year from now, from last year, we are much better off today in many areas than we were a year ago, and we seem to be completely on track. So directionally, we seem to be good. Pace seems to be good. If I was to just try to look at the discussions held during today, I think the one theme that stood out consistently was collaboration. Whether it was Tom who said that we need to come up with 2 good ideas each, whether it was Johanna who said that maybe if the energy industry and the shipping industry were to talk more together, that would be a really great idea. Then there was also in the first panel where there was a mention that if ports and shipping were to talk more together, maybe we would solve the just-in-time problem. So collaboration came out consistently as one theme of this entire session today, which means the onus actually is fairly upon us to be able to be more collaborative and be open-minded and not try to solve everything ourselves. Another theme that stood out today was how do we make sure, and this came out very strongly in the second panel, was we need to be sure that when we build a ship, we are future-proofing the ship to a certain extent so that all the good experimentation, trial and error that we do with the existing ships can actually be brought to the new ships later in life. I think this is a really, really important factor to create, whether it is the amount of power, whether it's the amount of space that is required on the ship in the future, because typically the timeline between between a ship being ordered, at least today, is between 3 years between order and delivery, which means for 3 years, even if you have great technology, you will never be able to test it. The only place to test it is on an existing vessel. And once this is done, we should have the ability to be able to put the technology and make the future ships more efficient than they are today. Another theme that came out again and again was we should not try to swallow the whole elephant in one piece. Maybe we should try to solve the problems that are available. I think Michael Skov from Hafnia, he specifically pointed out, maybe it's too complex to solve the whole piece in one go. It could be an idea to take whatever problem that we see, solve that, and move forward. Another element that I took back with me was on the people side. I think it becomes increasingly clear our role of how do we make the shipping industry, the maritime industry, more attractive to people who want to join it. If we want to get more people who are digital natives to come and accelerate the digital transformation that we need in shipping, then we also need to be more attractive as an industry. And here, all of us, no matter where we are situated, you may be a shipyard, you may be a OEM, you may be a ship owner, or you may be a trading house. It's our responsibility to attract the best talent into shipping as an industry, because that will accelerate this path towards becoming a net zero industry. And finally, what I think I would like to flag is we have to act now together, because it is very, very clear that based on the latest IPCC report that Johanna flagged earlier in the session, we have a task which is extremely important, but already as we can see it here, we are far ahead in terms of the emissions compared to where we should be at this point in time. And if we have to avoid overshooting the Paris Protocol, then we need to act together, and we need to do it now. So that was a little bit around what I took away from the sessions today. It was a lot of information. I tried to be as cohesive as possible.
Quite a few things there. And do you agree? Johanna Christensen said 2023. It's a critical year this year. Do you agree?
I think every single year is going to be critical from this point in time. I think what we need to do is there is a real fact, if you go back in 2020, they had calculated that about 500 gigatons of CO2 emissions would be needed. And at that point in time, if we added that to our current CO2 footprint in the world, we would be at 1.5 C on the Paris, we would have crossed the 1.5 C protocol. 120 tons have already been emitted in the last 3 years. So it's not only 2023, it's March 2023, and it is April 2023, and it is June 2023 that we need to act, not wait even till the end of 2023. Actually.
And it's even today and tomorrow.
Absolutely, and it's even today and tomorrow. You are spot on, Helena.
Yeah, and will you make it? The industry?
You can put your optimistic hat on, or you can be a realist here. I hope we will make it, but I also understand it's going to be one of the biggest challenges we have ever undertaken as an industry to make sure we don't overshoot the Paris Protocol. So I think there is going to be a very, very hard work, and this cannot be done seated where you are. We need to work together, collaborate, and that is the key word that we need to all of us take away from this session today, that if we try to do it by ourselves, we will not succeed. We need to do it together, and we need to act now.
So to summarize the summary then, as you said, Tom Eriksson in the opening session said that 2 learnings from today. I mean, we had so many learnings from today, but 2, if you just should concrete them.
I think one word that came out in probably from every single speaker was collaboration. That stands out. That's super clear. The second was not so clear, but for me, what I take away is time is of the essence. We need to act now.
Act now. And collaboration.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Samir. And to you in the audience, we also say thank you, of course, for joining us. And if you want to look again on something, or if you missed something, then there is this event is recorded and is on Alfa Laval's home on the site. And well, Marine Innovation Summit somehow comes next year as well, and then you have done a lot of work until then, 2024. So we say,
Elena, before you close, could I just make a final this one? I think I would just like to take the opportunity to thank all the guests. We are the hosts for the session today as Alfa Laval. I would like to thank all the guests who used their own time to come and join this session. I would like to thank all the audience, because you asked a few questions, but there were so many questions coming from the audience that have not been answered, but we will come back to you on every single question, because without the guests, without the panel speakers, without the audience, this session in a studio doesn't really mean anything. And all of you will be really happy to know that more than 700 people or individual computers have joined, and I have received photographs that are behind one computer at certain places. We have even had 5 to 6 people on a certain computer. So I get a sense we have reached out to 1,000 people today. I just think it's fantastic, actually.
It is fantastic. And over 60 countries also joined this event. So 2024, they are welcome back.
We are looking forward.
We are looking forward to that. Thank you so much, and goodbye for now.